How do you feel about the sprint race in general, though? I mean, this is our second season now having them. They've tweaked the format slightly. So, do you think those are like small improvements for the sprint races that we've seen last year? I think both of us were quite skeptical last year.
You know what? I'm hearing your logic. I'm hearing it, but I'm not agreeing with it. No. So I think in general, I'm not best pleased with this weekend. I don't think that it's what I would have wanted. But this was only the fourth race of the season, so I'm hoping that Ferrari can kind of pull back from this.
Hi guys, welcome back to On the Chicane. You're here with me, Paris, and my co-host Marium. Today we're talking about the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix in Italia, one of Ferrari's home races. We are kind of super excited because it was a wet weekend, it was a sprint race weekend, so we were expecting a lot of chaos, a lot of talking points, and an exciting race because the Ferraris have been doing so well at the beginning of this year. So we knew that the Tifosi were going to be out in full force, making sure that these Ferrari boys got some cars back home. So Mariam, how was the weekend for you? Let's take it maybe back to like Friday, Saturday, quali or sprint. Any key moments that really stood out for you?
I think I'm struggling, okay. As a Ferrari fan, this weekend has not been the best weekend for me because I think we saw Leclerc struggling a bit in the sprint. I mean, he had a pretty good quali, but the sprint, obviously, Max managed to get the lead from him. And then the race today was disastrous for Ferrari, really. So I think in general, I'm not best pleased with this weekend. I don't think that it's what I would have wanted. But this was only the fourth race of the season, so I'm hoping that Ferrari can kind of pull back from this. We're going to Miami next, so that's going to be a completely new circuit for everyone. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of pans out. But yeah, I don't know. I wasn't. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
I feel like, Leclerc had an amazing start. He overtook Verstappen very early in the sprint race in the first lap. And I was really hopeful that he was going to maintain for the entire race. He just kind of fell off at the end with some tire deg. And people were even saying that maybe he was kind of doing like a setup for the next race for today, because he was maybe positioning himself better on the track for a getaway today, and allowing Verstappen to overtake him, almost playing these cat and mouse chess games that he's been playing for the beginning of the year. I don't particularly personally think so. I think if you're a racing driver, you always want to be in the top spot no matter what. So it was just an unfortunate kind of overtake for him towards the end of the sprint race. How do you feel about the sprint race in general, though? I mean, this is our second season now having them. They've tweaked the format slightly. So previously, only the top 3 drivers were getting points. Now the top 8 drivers are getting points. You get 8 points if you're first, and then 1 point if you're in 8th position. They've also kind of moved pole positions back to qualifying. So last year, if you got the top spot at the end of the sprint race, you were awarded pole, but now that stat is going back to kind of the origin way, which is having it as your quali result. So do you think those are like small improvements for the sprint races that we've seen last year? I think both of us were quite skeptical last year.
I think I'm still the same, to be honest. I don't think I've made up my mind as to what I think about sprints. Part of me thinks, yeah, they're quite fun and, adds a new element to the weekend. But another part of me is a little bit like, what is the point?
Yeah.
We've only got 3 this entire season as well. And it just, to me, it just kind of, the point thing, like, I'm just, again, you're giving points to the top 8. Why not the top 10? I just don't understand how it's decided, and I don't understand the reasoning for it. And if pole isn't given to the sprint winner, then why do we have the sprint? Does that make sense?
I agree. I think Max Verstappen has been, actively kind of saying that it changes the whole structure of the weekend. It reduces the amount of time that they have, to get ready. It pushes them into different media commitments all in one day because of quali being on a Friday. I missed a portion of quali because I had work. So for me, actually, as well, it was quite inconvenient. I missed part of Q1. And, I'm not sold on the format. And for once, they actually have me agreeing with Max Verstappen. So that's never a good sign. And I don't know. I don't see the spectacle of it. I think I would much rather like a standalone race at the end of the year, like a special event or something that's just a bit more fun and doesn't mess up the weekend too much. In saying that, that's it. I don't think it really changed much. I think the order was still pretty similar from quali to today's race. So I personally don't really see the benefit of the sprint.
I think that's key. I think like not seeing the benefit of it, there isn't really a benefit to it. And I think it, like you say, it kind of messes up the format for the weekend. There is no real reason for it, other than to just add. I think, again, the annoying thing is I feel like it's the FIA and Formula One trying to play into the entertainment side of the sport as opposed to focusing on the sport itself. Which is obviously something that you and I have both had an issue with, because obviously the whole DTS thing and whatever. So yeah, I feel like there isn't a real reason or a need for it. And I'm happy to just stick to the usual race weekend format that we know, which allows the drivers to have 3 practice sessions and then their quali. Because without that practice, really, how are cars supposed to like learn and develop and, get into a better position for the race? Because if you think about it, this weekend they would have had 2 practice sessions, and then they'd have had to use quali and the sprint and the race to be able to analyze the data and try and fix their car for the next race.
No, I agree with you. I think there is a lot less time for setup, and there is a lot less time for these kind of things over the course of the weekend. I think in general this year we're seeing the repercussions of a lack of testing in general, not just practice sessions. I think had there been a little bit more pre-season testing to actually see the cars running, some of the teams would be doing a bit better. So I'm thinking Aston, I'm thinking Mercedes, I think McLaren, who have obviously made massive leaps in the first few races of the season, possibly could have been where they are now at the beginning of the season had they had that extra testing. I agree. I think the sprints are unnecessary, and let's leave it at that, really. Today's race was expected to be a wet race throughout. The teams did the formation lap on wets and were deciding whether or not to come out on wets or inters, because the racetrack was drying up, but then they were predicting rain, which never came. So it was quite an interesting setup, I think, for tyres and race strategy. The first lap, you had quite a lot actually happened on the first lap. You had Leclerc was pretty slow off the mark. Verstappen got him and managed to stay ahead. Perez got in front of him. Lando Norris, I think, got in front of him as well. So it was a pretty shocking start for Leclerc, who I was actually hoping was going to do the same kind of start that he did yesterday. You then had Sainz, who ended up off into the gravel. And you had Schumacher going into Alonso and literally tearing a hole in the side of his car, making it look like one of the Starship Enterprises when they get ripped apart in space. So yeah, quite a lot happened on that first lap.
You've pretty much just covered it all. That was literally everything that happened. Leclerc annoyingly had a really bad start, which is frustrating because I think out of the two of them, Leclerc's had the better start all throughout the season so far. I mean, we're only 4 races in, but he's had the better start. So getting off the line like that was just so slow, and allowing Perez to overtake and take the lead. And then again, like you say, Norris being able to overtake, and then Leclerc dropping down to 4th within the opening stages was just not what Ferrari needed, especially in front of their home crowd. And then what happened at the back of the grid with Sainz and whatever, and him just completely just crashing out, spinning off. To be fair, I don't think Sainz was to blame, and Sainz has had a really, not really, but a bit of a poor start to the season, right? Like in comparison to his teammate, it's not obviously what he'd have wanted.
And Daniel Ricciardo, who crashed into him, also has not necessarily had the greatest start to the season, and then kind of caused that little kerfuffle a little bit.
I was going to say that I would put that down to Ricciardo. Was Ricciardo penalised for that?
No, it was decided that it was a racing incident, you know, first lap shenanigans and all that. Do you feel like, as a Ferrari fan, or taking away your Ferrari fan, do you feel like that he should have been penalised?
This is honestly, Paris, this is again going back to the issue with Abu Dhabi. There's so much inconsistency with the stewards and what they say, and like I feel like in another race for 2 other drivers that potentially could have been penalised, but this time around it wasn't. And I just feel like I don't know what's right and what's wrong anymore, because there's been no standard format for us to follow, for us to be like instantly, yeah, that's a racing incident, or instantly that should be penalised. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I think it is hard, like now, knowing all the shoddy decision making that was made last year. From my eye and my knowledge, I do feel like it was a racing incident. I don't feel like there was enough steer lock on Daniel Ricciardo to say like he was turning into somebody. I don't feel like he left like not enough room for Sainz to get past. It just so happened that he clipped the curb a little bit and his car moved over a bit. I personally feel like it was a first lap racing incident, and it's just the way it was. But if you're going to assign blame definitely was a bit more Ricciardo's fault, and it was just a shame that it happened to Sainz. Like it was, I just felt really bad for him.
Yeah, me too. I was absolutely gutted for him. I think everyone kind of had high hopes based on Ferrari's performance this year, and obviously going into their home race, it's literally at the circuit of like Enzo Ferrari, and you've just got not the result that you wanted. So I'm gutted as a Ferrari fan, and I just think we expected more, but it wasn't Sainz's fault. I do agree with you. I think racing incident. But I think you and I are very lenient generally when it comes to things like this. I think we usually just say, oh, that could have been a racing incident. I don't think we're too harsh.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would agree with you on that. And it, like you say, it's just a shame that it happened to Sainz. Like,
I think it's a shame as well for Ferrari, because then they couldn't do like racing strategies with 2 of their drivers up front to kind of beat the Red Bulls, and it kind of made Leclerc have a little bit of one arm behind his back. You know, Perez was up there fighting Perez and stuff, whereas Perez and Sainz could have been fighting each other, or you know, Sainz could have been in a position to take on Verstappen when Leclerc dropped back. So definitely, I hope that Sainz confidence is not knocked by the first 4 races of the season. I hope that he just says, you know, dusts it all off and says, bad luck, let's move on to the next one. You know, he has a fast car, so he should be up there.
I don't think his confidence should be knocked, really, because he has managed to get 2 podiums out of 4 races. So still, you know, he's still got it. So I think, yeah, we'll just have to see how the rest of the season plays out. Moving along slightly, there were a few midfield battles involving various cars, but I think the main one that we saw a lot of was Magnussen and Bottas. And then in between their little fight, there were like loads of other teams and drivers getting involved.
At different times, right? Yeah.
Different times, but for the most part, it was just Bottas and Magnussen. But there were points where I think Vettel was involved, Tsunoda, Russell, Bottas was chasing down Russell, which was so interesting to see, because it was like, I was just thinking Bottas is probably thinking, that's the guy who took my seat. I'm gonna go get him. So
Mm.
it was just really interesting, but good battles, because there wasn't any chaos. There wasn't anything that, like, it wasn't dirty and it wasn't messy, basically. I think it was just good racing, and nice to see these midfield battles going on, and the battle for points. Yeah, what did you think of it?
Commendation to Kevin Magnussen, who was really high up there this week, and you know, he's come back into that Haas and found a very fortunate position to be in, where you've come back into a car that wasn't performing so well, and now you have a car that can challenge, you know, the Alfa Romeos, it can challenge the Alpines, and I think that's just amazing for Kevin Magnussen, you know, personally and professionally. I think the racing was great. I think I did not want Bottas to overtake Russell, just because I think the optics of it is just very messy, and I didn't want the mess, and I couldn't bother to hear the you know, Bottas beats the Mercedes because now he's in the Alpha. I didn't want to hear it. I was just like, oh, you know, like, I hope George can keep him behind, and he did manage to keep him behind in the closing stages of the race. Bottas, you know, again, we've always said that Bottas is a good driver. I think our main issue with Bottas last year was just sometimes that he didn't exhibit that, and he didn't strategize, and he didn't kind of like use his most shrewd way of driving or shrewd way of thinking. So I think him having that security in Alfa Romeo is allowing him to do that, and he's performing really well. But yeah, no, it was interesting to see. It was great to see all the drivers kind of in the middle there. Alonso kind of fell off really early, so he DNF'd as well as Sainz, but he also was in some of the earlier fights with Tsunoda. He just got hit, as we said, by Mick Schumacher, and that pulled him all the way back down. You just kind of saw him tumbling through the ranks, didn't you? So yeah, it was some good racing. Yuki was a little firecracker in the middle there as well.
Yuki was amazing today, just so good, and just, yeah, like you say, a little firecracker, just on one, I feel like, which was nice to see. But touching on Russell, let's talk about Mercedes in a bit more of a wider context, and their race today. We have to.
Okay.
We don't want to, but we have to.
I know.
Their race today. So, how do we start this? Generally, they had a bad.
Go for it. You go for it.
They just had a bad weekend. Quali, the sprint, pace just was not on the side of Mercedes, and I think the wet conditions just did not help their car. They struggled. Lewis struggled a lot, and it was just so difficult to see today. There was a point in the race where it's actually awful. There was a point in the race where Hamilton was 14th, I think, and Max is coming around and ended up lapping Hamilton. So Hamilton got blue flags waved at him.
I didn't really want to think about that, but yes, it did happen. And me and Marium were like messaging each other on WhatsApp saying, I actually can't watch this. I can't believe this.
Yeah.
I think it's an unfortunate situation where I actually feel like Lewis is probably a bit further behind where he is supposed to be. And Russell has been extremely advantageous, like making the most out of everything that's been happening in front of him in all of the races, and positioning himself in such a way that allows him to kind of make the most of that. And it just optically looks awful for them, because obviously a lot of the media are kind of just going to jump on the fact that George is ahead of Lewis. I think that Mercedes might need to start thinking about a different approach to their car, because what they're doing is not working. We know that they're working super hard because they keep telling us, the drivers keep telling us, and they keep saying, you know, like, we're putting everything in that we can in the factory. So in the sprint race, Russell and Hamilton were like 11th and 13th, I think. So literally just, they kind of maintain these positions really far back down the grid. And the reason that George ended up so far in front was because of everything that happened on the first lap. And somehow Lewis just wasn't able to make those same gains in the first few laps. He made it up to 11th. And then they had that moment where he goes into the pits. His pit stop is a little bit longer than it should have been. I'm not going to say anything about that. I feel like I've wasted enough breath on Mercedes and their pit stops. And then subsequently he comes out of his pit stop and Ocon, you know, drives into him. So he also had a bad pit stop, I want to say, in Saudi Arabia. I think it was Jeddah, it wasn't last time out. So, you know, Lewis has been on the end of some really, really bad luck. Lewis went into the pits and he had that unfortunate pit stop. And as he's coming out, you know, Ocon gets an unsafe release, for which he got a 5-second penalty because it was so blatant. And then he literally like goes into the side of him. So I think Lewis has been on the end of some really bad luck. George has been on the end of some really good luck, on the other hand, and that's what's causing this massive gaping gap between them, and the fact that Lewis has not been able to get points. I just hope that the kind of conversations that are happening around it don't put a wedge in between them and make an unnecessary gap, because I think that they are both capable drivers of extracting as much as they can out of that car. It's just for some reason not happening at the moment. So I don't think we should worry too much. It's only 4 races into the year, and I think, you know, we have a long time to go, and Mercedes are working really hard, but it's just really hard to see at the moment if you're a Mercedes fan.
I think that is pretty much the gist of it. I think Mercedes just need to just keep on going, basically, and hopefully we'll get something out of the car soon. We know that, like you say, we know that they're working hard to resolve these issues. There's still a lot of porpoising issues, unfortunately, but it's just a matter of them just working on it. There's nothing else that we can do or say. I think it's just, like you say, difficult to watch if you're a Merc fan, but it is what it is, and we know that we'll come back stronger at some point, just don't know when, but yeah, it's fine.
Exactly.
So I think the other major talking point for the race today was the last few laps and Leclerc, Red Bull gaining, and just that annoying end to the race, basically. Leclerc was second, right, at this point? Yeah, he was second behind Max. Max had managed to pull off an overtake on Leclerc and take that lead, which was annoying. But something happened, and Leclerc, who was trying to fend off Perez was really close, and Perez was doing really well in putting pressure on Leclerc, superb driving up until this point where something happened. He went over the sausage curb and lost control, couldn't manage to get his car back, and went straight off into the side, into the barrier. Luckily, the damage wasn't too bad, and he managed to get himself back onto the track, but he lost positions for it, and was just the icing on the cake as a Ferrari fan. I think just exactly what you wouldn't want to happen happened. So yeah, Red Bull managed to gain from that, and so did McLaren.
Yeah,
podium because of that. So yeah, I don't know. What did you think of it?
I mean, like, it's the first mistake that we've seen Leclerc make for the year. He has been on top of his game, and everybody's allowed to make a mistake. See, okay, on the one hand, I feel like I really am backing Ferrari whilst Mercedes are working on their thing. Ferrari are like, I'm happy for Ferrari to be my second team, right, at the moment. I'd say McLaren used to be my team, but for Ferrari at the moment. But so I'm happy when Leclerc wins because I'm happy for him, and I'm happy when Sainz wins because I'm happy for him. I'm happy for Ferrari. However, whilst Mercedes are working on their shit, right, kind of I'm happy that Red Bull and Ferrari are taking points away from each other, so that no one stacks up too many points, that when Mercedes start doing well, they can come back here and win the constructors and win the drivers' championship real easy, because there's points up for grabs.
You know what? I'm hearing your logic. I'm hearing it, but I'm not agreeing with it. No, I do not want Red Bull to gain any kind of advantage. So, no.
I know. But that's why I was praying for like a Checo win. I was like, what can Max do right now that's gonna F him up? And then Checo just wins. Because at least then I could be happy for my like second favorite driver, even though he's in my like least favorite team. So I don't know. I'm just, split the points, do your thing, and let Mercedes come back on top.
I don't agree at all. I want Ferrari up there. Like, if Mercedes can catch up, then amazing. But ideally, I want Ferrari up there. I don't want Red Bull anywhere near. And today was just not what we needed in terms of points for constructors and points for drivers. So, yeah, just I'm gutted at how that worked out. But, happy for Norris, little kid managed to just get in there and take that from Leclerc. I don't know how, but he did. So yeah.
Another couple of like mentions, I think, just worth mentioning, points wise actually, was Vettel and Stroll, like your other good team. They actually managed to get their first points of the season. So yeah, how do you feel about that?
I don't know what happened. It kind of just came out of nowhere, right? Like, Aston going into this weekend were the only team to not have any points. Both of our drivers have either DNF'd or just been so far out of the points. They've been at the back of the grid, like just nowhere to be seen, not even worth a mention. And then today, out of nowhere, and both of them today managed to carry that forward into the race. Stroll took the last point, and it was just, like I say, came out of nowhere. So unexpected for a team that's not doing well at all. For them to then just come back and be like, oh, actually, guys, we're still here. We still exist. I don't know. Maybe it's the wet conditions that or the wet going into dry conditions that played into their favor, because the weekend itself has been wet, but the race today was wet into dry. So maybe that played into their favor. I don't know. But it was nice to see.
Do you think that Aston have been like working on their development, and maybe some of the car is the upgrades on the car are helping, and they're better?
Yeah, definitely. I do think that's got a part to play in it. But also, I think we have to give credit to the drivers as well, because we see a lot of mistakes from both Seb and Stroll individually. And I think for them to manage to stay out of like any drama today and just focus on coming home with points was pretty remarkable. So yeah, I think credit where credit's due. The team and the drivers managed to just somehow pull it out of the bag and bring home some points today, which was so nice to see and so unexpected.
Yeah, no, it's really good. Like you said, they've now leapfrogged Williams, so they're no longer in the bottom spot. Williams are struggling at the back. Actually, we haven't really mentioned at all Alex Albon. So I think next race I'll be keeping a little eye out for him and seeing more so how he's doing. He's been pretty quiet, I think, staying out of trouble. Zhou has also, for Alfa Romeo, been staying out of trouble. I think that's the best thing for him, though. Like, I don't want to hear anything about him. Last year we heard a lot about Yuki, all of the mistakes and things he was making at the beginning of the year. Got him shipped off to Italy. So I feel like it's good if we don't hear anything about him. But yeah, kudos to Aston Martin, and well done to Lance Stroll and Sir Vettel. So happy to all of the Aston fans. I'm going to shout out Felicia on F1 because I know she's always talking to you about Aston. Yeah. So literally, I think we can do our winners of the day and our losers of the day. Who is your winner of the day?
I'm going to give it to Norris. I think he managed to pull a good one out of the bag, and getting himself on that podium is pretty impressive considering McLaren had a poor start to the season. They've only just managed to pick it up. I think their last race was okay. And for Norris to actually bring home a podium finish today, yeah, I'm going to give it to him, I think.
Okay. I think for my winner of the day, I'm going to give that to George Russell. I think managing to take home fourth place position again, being the lead Mercedes in a struggling car, I think that's really, really good on him, and he's driving so well, and I'm so happy for him. So I'm going to give my winner of the day an easy one, give that to George Russell.
Okay, my loser, I'm just trying to think, and I don't know who to give it to. I don't want to give it to who I'm thinking of giving it to. I know you know who I'm thinking of.
Because I know you know that I'm going to give it to him, so.
All right, fine.
Give it to someone else.
I'll go, okay, fine, I'll just go for the obvious one, Carlos Sainz, I think.
Okay.
You know, just poor guy, struggled, not what we wanted, but yeah. Go on, Paris, who's your loser of the day?
I'm going to give it to Charles Leclerc. Like, made a mistake, doesn't make that many mistakes, but he made a mistake and it cost him big. So sorry, you're my loser of the day.
Yeah, I'm really sad. Anyway, Ferrari can pick this up, okay? They'll come back stronger in Miami, I hope. So yeah, actually, speaking of Miami, guys, just a very quick update. I am working that race weekend and then I'm flying out. So Paris and I may be able to record straight after the race. We might not be able to, but that video might be a little bit late. If it is, we'll obviously give you guys a heads up, but this is just your little pre-warning just in case it is a little bit late. But yeah, we've got Miami in 2 weeks. First race in Miami. Looking forward to
it? I'm skeptical. It's a street race. It's going to be probably a narrow track. Not sure if there's going to be much overtaking, even with DRS and stuff. I want to see how many DRS zones and things they have. I think the vibe for the weekend is going to be lit. I think it's going to be a party atmosphere, and there's literally supposed to be like a yacht marina they're building in the middle of the track. So God knows how that's going to look. I've actually heard that they've also ran into a few lumps and bumps trying to actually get the track the authority to proceed through the local council, because apparently like locals are protesting it. So let's hope that the Miami GP even goes ahead, because we don't even know if that's going to happen at this point. But 2 weeks, I'm sure we will be made aware by FOM.
I'm sure we'll be racing, but yeah, for us in the UK, it's a very late one. Unfortunately, I think the race finishes at like 10:30 or something. It's going to be interesting. We'll just see how it goes. But yeah, as usual, everyone, thank you so much for watching. Follow us on the chicane on Twitter, Instagram, and obviously here on YouTube. Subscribe, share, like, comment, all of that. And we will catch you next time for the Miami Grand Prix and round 5 of the 2022 Formula One World Championship season.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.